Hello all, let's learn about antimicrobial resistance, which is rightly called as a silent killer pandemic. Millions of people in the United States receive care, but that can get complicated by bacterial and fungal infection. Without antibiotics, we are not able to safely offer some life-saving medical advances. Anyone can get an infection. Almost any infection can lead to sepsis. The body's extreme response to an infection. Without timely treatment with antibiotics, sepsis can lead to tissue damage, organ failure, and death. Do I need to worry? Yes. Patients for surgery are at risk of surgical site infections. Without effective antibiotics to prevent an surgical infection, many surgeries will not be possible today. What about parents? Chronic conditions like diabetes put elderly people at high risk for infections. This condition and some medicines used to treat them can weaken the immune system. More than 30 million people have diabetes. Antibiotics are used to treat such common infections among them. Antibiotic resistant infections threaten the modern medicines. Organ transplants are more vulnerable to infections, and antibiotics are often comes to the rescue for the treatment of infection or organ transplant infections. Patients who receive dialysis treatment have a high risk of infection, the second leading cause of death in dialysis patients. Cancer compromised patients, antibiotics are needed in this category of patients. Patients using chemotherapy are often at risk for developing infection during treatment. Antimicrobial resistance occurs when bacteria, virus, fungi, and parasites change over time and no longer respond to our medicines. Use antimicrobials as directed by the clinicians or the healthcare professionals to preserve the effectiveness of these medicines. It's an interconnected world. A one health challenge will be the solution against this fight of antimicrobial resistance. The interconnected threat of antimicrobial resistance. Resistance happens when germs defeat the drugs, and any antibiotic used in people's, animals, or crops can lead to resistance. Resistant germs are a one health problem. They can spread between peoples, animals, and the environment. It is not just us. It is the peoples, it is animals, and the environment. For the people, it can spread from person to person. It's a nightmare bacteria. Carbapenem-resistant antibiotics can also survive and grow in the sink drains at the healthcare facilities. In animals, the germs can spread between animals and people through food and contact with animals can get the resistant germs. In the environment, the antibiotic resistant germs can spread in the environment as puzzlers and other such molds can be found in environmental areas. 1 in 10% can get an infection while receiving care. Healthcare workers can reduce the spread of infection by ensuring their hands, instruments, and environment are kept clean. Substandard and falsified medicines contribute to antimicrobial resistance. Increased regulations and enforcement promotes availability of quality medicines for stop the overuse of antibiotics and misuse of why we should talk about resistance. Resistance training is just as important as cardio. Train yourself to resist chocolate, pastries, fried foods, beer, pizza. Similarly, resist against antibiotics. Understanding resistance is important. We observe World Antimicrobial Awareness Week in the month of November to raise awareness against antimicrobial. The silent tsunami is facing the modern medicine. It has been a topic of numerous international health and political summits. Great deal of data exists in the form of reports and guidelines to tackle antimicrobial resistance. Still, the problem of resistance, especially multi-drug resistance, gram-negative bacilli, continues to increase with every. We have seen from 1943 to 2015 and still going on. We have seen the number of antibiotics being approved and released. However, in parallel, within years of the discovery of the antibiotics, we are seeing the antimicrobial resistance among the antibiotics too, against the antibiotics among the bacteria too. So, the timeline of the antibiotic introduction and the resistance is narrowing. Within years of the antibiotics discovery, the resistance is developing against the antibiotics amongst the bacteria. If you can see from the slide, from 1930s to 2005, whenever the antibiotics were discovered, within years the resistance. We are now in a post-antibiotic era, means it is an end to modern medicine as we know it. Things as common as streptococcal throat infection or a child scratched knee could once again kill. Now, what is the mechanism of antibiotic actions? I have been trying out, it was said by the Alexander Fleming that I have been trying out to find out that in our lives, chance may have an astonishing influence, and if I may offer advice to the young lab worker, it will be this: never to neglect an extraordinary appearance or happening. So that was the quote given by Alexander Fleming, and be very careful while for noting unusual findings in the laboratory. if you see the bacterial under microscope, we'll find that it's composed of cell wall, DNA, RNAs, plasma membranes, ribosomes, and metabolic pathways. So with the beta, each of the antibiotics has their specific mechanism of site of action. Like beta-lactam antibiotics has on a cell wall, then fluoroquinolones has their site of action on DNA synthesis, rifampicin has on the RNA synthesis, folic acid, cotromycin have their site of action on the metabolic pathways like folic acids, and other similar these antibiotics have their actions on the metabolic pathways or on the structural components of the cell. Antibiotic resistance is when these bacteria, fungi develop the ability to defeat the antibiotics designed to kill them. It does not mean that your body is resistant to antibiotics. It is the germs that develop the ability to defeat them. How the antibiotic resistance happens? First, a lot of germs, then a few are drug resistant. Then antibiotics kill this bacteria as well as a good bacteria also protecting body from infection. Then the drug resistant bacteria are not allowed to grow. And some bacteria give the drug resistance to other bacteria prevalent in the human body, causing more problems. So this is how the antibiotic resistance progress. What is persistence versus the resistance? When an antimicrobial is given, the resistance cells develops. Then eventually all the cells are resistant. However, while in the persistent cells, new growth is still sensitive. So that's the difference between persistence and resistance. With the resistance, there is a complete, there is a, we'll see all the cells are resistant, while in persistence, the never growth are still, will be a mixture of sensitive and resistant cells. Now, what is the development? Let's say that what do you understand by selective advantage gene transfer and cross resistance? In selective advantage, bacteria that control resistance mechanism can survive and multiply when exposed to antibiotics. In gene transfer, it allows there is a resistance gene that gets transferred from bacteria to bacteria developing resistance. In cross resistance, there are changes in the bacteria which creates resistance to one antibiotic, which may cause the spreading of the resistance to other antibiotics as well. So the resistance can can pass through either bacterial transformation or transduction by means of a bacteriophage or by conjugation by means of a conjugation tube. So the resistance can pass through either by conjugation, transformation that is directly from extracellular environment or by means of a bacteriophage. What are the examples of antibiotic resistance spreads? Animals can get the antibiotics and develop resistance. Then people can develop the resistance by consuming antibiotics, and then the people can also get resistance from the consuming this food and water. And animals who have developed the antimicrobial, who have consumed the antibiotics through means of food and water and other food grains, and develop the resistance. So it's like a cycle that revolves. Let's see the date attributable to antimicrobial resistance every year. Antimicrobial resistance in 2050 will be about the dates will be attributed to about 10 million. While it will be the most it is predicted that antimicrobial resistance is a major cause of mortality as compared to tetanus, road traffic accidents, measles, dialysis, diabetes, cholera, and cancer. How about what is the resistance in microbes? Is it a natural phenomenon? Yes. Resistance is unresponsiveness to antimicrobial agents in standard doses. It is a natural phenomena. We won't be able to stop it completely, but we need to control it. Resistance is generally slow to reverse or irreversible. All antimicrobial agents have the potential to select drug resistance subpopulation of resistance is accelerated through inappropriate use of antimicrobials. Standard treatment guidelines not provided to physicians or can is one of the major factors for antimicrobial resistance. Then drugs are available without prescriptions, accessible antibiotics but poor quality, inappropriate inadequate use of microbiology labs, inadequate monitoring, irrational safe administration are the many causes of that leads to antimicrobial. Resistance is a fallout of inappropriate use of antimicrobials in different settings, in community settings as well as healthcare settings. Therapeutic and non-therapeutic causes. 50% of the antibiotics are prescribed inappropriately. 50% of patients have poor compliance to antibiotic use. 50% of the population do not have access to essential antibiotics. So these are the major causes that is leading to antimicrobial. Data is patchy. Not all the resistance, as well the antibiogram and the compliance to antibiotic policy and many other things related to the use of antibiotics are reported poorly. Hence, the data is patchy. This is the data which is available on, which is available from the World Health Organization of the year 2013. How antibiotic resistance spreads? I said before, from the germs are everywhere. Some help us, some make people, crops, or animals sick. Then antibiotics kill the germs that cause the infection, but antibiotic resistant germs find ways to survive. The antibiotic resistant germs can multiply, can also give to resistance directly to other germs. Antibiotics also kill the helpful germs that protect us. Once antibiotic resistance emerges, it can spread to the new setting and between countries. And there is a development of a global resistance against antibiotics. What's the impact on current and future patients? Antibiotics used contribute to development of antibiotic resistance. For most medicines, side effects are limited to individual, but resistance can develop from exposure to an antibiotic may also affect the future patients too. And the wider so this is how the consumption of antimicrobials that is a study is a graph from an Indian study where the consumption is plotted in terms of different daily doses per thousand population, and we see that the consumption of antimicrobials is significantly increased. What are the origins of resistance? Either natural resistance or natural resistance means the inherent property of a bacteria or fungus. Examples of such natural resistance are bacterides having natural resistance against aminoglycosides, E. coli against macrolides, and other such. So this is an example of natural acquired resistance wherein the bacteria or the fungi in translation or transformation or through alterations in some of the cell components. What should be worried about? We should be worried about the urgent threats by some of the bacteria as listed here and the fungi threats, and there are some organisms which are on the watch list. WHO has released a list of world's most dangerous, includes priority 1, 2, 3 group of organisms as listed here. It is very important to understand the habitat and reservoirs of the gram-negative bacilli to understand how they spread. They can be lurking inside the hospitals in the colonized patients, the hospital linen, the biofilms, the patients, and other. The rising incomes and increased access to antibiotics are saving is an issue, but because it is leading to the antimicrobial misuse and resistance. What are the 6 measures for developing for prevention and control against antimicrobial? Is hand hygiene, contact precautions, staff cohorting, patient cohorting, minimize use of invasive diseases, promote antimicrobial stewardship and screening. Infection prevention control is a major tool against AMR. Tracking the data, antibiotic usage, vaccines, diagnostics developed against AMR, and environmental and sanitation is key to resistance. We need to study the pattern of development of resistance and the environmental control too. The per capita total antibiotic use needs to be curtailed. Antimicrobial consumption needs to be monitored, and cells needs to be monitored, and the epidemiology can be local, but it can vary by country, hospital units, and global availability of colistin. So emergence of colistin resistance is a concern, serious concern. Is referring to an article by China where the resistance was. So the resistance is not limited to a single country. It's spreading. Then what we can do? Only use antibiotics when necessary. Always take the full prescription. Never use the leftover antibiotics. Never share the antibiotics with anyone, with others, and prevent infections by regular washing. Curtail the production, prescription, and consumption of antibiotics both in human and veterinary medicine. Education of the general population is required. Offering access to clean, affordable water and sanitation is essential. Promoting vaccination and by introducing animal breeding and food production processes which render the use of antibiotics unnecessary. Implement a mandatory antimicrobial stewardship program, surveillance, patient history and risk-based screening is required, accessing the medical history and hospital stay within the last 12 months. Training and education of the personnel is essential. So principle of rapid diagnosis, monitoring the infection control standards, and contact prevention, transmission-based precaution, and safe decontamination will be a key in our fight against antimicrobial. There are 3 levels of behavioral change. Behavioral change is the key in this fight against AMR that we very dependent upon the outcome, process, and idea. So always get advice from the healthcare professionals from for antimicrobial. Drug resistance is increasing in post-operative infections, hence needs to be taken. The surgical and site infection needs to be prevented and controlled. Good hygiene can help in the spread of healthcare associated. Access to safe water and hygiene is essential. Continue tuberculosis and HIV treatments to prevent drug resistance. That's all. Use the antibiotics responsibly. Thank you.